Hey, fellow Star Wars fans. I'm Mike, and you're watching Force Within TV. And today I want to talk about Ezra and Sabine, or Ezrabine, a relationship between Ezra and Sabine, perhaps romance, in Star Wars Rebels Season 4. And, going into this, even writing up some notes on this video, I was a little skeptical about the development of a relationship or a romance, but once you look at the progression of their relationship, which we're going to do here in a moment, it really does look like these guys could be in a long-term relationship or some sort of romantic relationship. Very interesting to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through very quickly sort of that progression I just mentioned, and then I'm going to give you a few different scenarios, sort of predictions as to how that could play out after Star Wars Rebels Season 4. Awesome, guys. So let's get started here. Now, in Season 1, we really, we saw that Ezra is 14 years old. Sabine is 16. We now know that Sabine, by the age of 16, has been through all these different things. She was recruited by the Empire. She created this weapon that was used on her own people. She became a bounty hunter, right? And then she became part of a member of the Ghost crew. And, she's been through all these things. She's very mature and much more mature, I believe, than Ezra in Season 1. In those 2 years, that's a big difference between the age of 14 and 16. So she literally calls him kid, right? There's a big separation between the two of them, though Ezra is definitely very interested in Sabine and does do things to try and impress her. Sabine is just at that point, too, much more mature. So if we move now on to Season 2, Ezra at this point is becoming, a respected warrior. I mean, he's a Jedi Padawan, right? And so that relationship starts to change. They become, Sabine respects Ezra more because of that. They've become, family now, almost like brother and sister. Remember that awesome episode where they're captured by the Inquisitors, right? They have to work together, and ultimately it's Zeb who rescues them. Season 13 or 14, or sorry, episode 13 or 14 in Season 2, always two there are. So, there's quite the progression there. Change, a bit of a subtle change, really, I suppose, from Ezra just being too young for, and then Sabine sort of at least respecting him, right? Not so much calling him kid anymore. So if we move on to Season 3, this is where we really see the big change between the relationships start to happen, right? Ezra becomes Sabine's teacher in Trials of the Darksaber. He's showing her how to sword fight, the basics. And there's this massive shift in the relationship because of that, because of the patience he shows Sabine. And there's that one epic part in that great, absolutely fantastic episode where Sabine is full of self-pity. She's complaining about her parents and how she can't go back and face them on Mandalore, right? And Ezra says, well, at least you have parents to go back to. And I think that's very telling. He doesn't do it in a hurtful way. He just mentions it, and I think that in itself, the fact that Ezra is in that teacher role, that he makes a really good point to Sabine, but also that his compassion that he brings to that relationship, his patience that he brings to that relationship. I think we start to see a shift there, and then if we move on to say 0 Hour at the end. Who does Ezra reach out to for help? He goes straight to Sabine, his trusted companion, and she comes to his aid and rescues the family, basically. So again, there's that obviously a closer bond developing. And then if we look at the trailer, we have Ezra and only Ezra. This is a very interesting fact, right? We only see Ezra helping Sabine on Mandalore, and this is supposed to happen very early in the season. In fact, it might be right at the beginning of the season premiere. So Ezra is the only one on Mandalore helping Sabine. Okay, so obviously, I mean, that alone has to bring them closer together. Whether it's going to be in a romantic, situation, I tend to think so. I mean, these are two young people that are fighting side by side. It would just make sense. Also, the fact that we know from the Star Wars Rebels Season 4 trailer, Sabine gets hurt and Ezra is rescuing her. We see Sabine looking very injured on the back of the wolf. Ezra is riding the wolf, trying to get some help for Sabine, obviously. And, again, if Ezra saves Sabine's life, that is going to bring their relationship that much closer as well. So you're really starting to see now that progression from early in season 1 where Sabine is calling him kid to now where Ezra is actually saving her life. He's a respected warrior. They're much older. As the older you get, the less that 2 years difference in maturity really makes. We just see that progression of them coming closer together. Their stories have been very linked here. So, hey guys, so let's talk about some different scenarios where Ezra and Sabine could have a romantic relationship long term after Star Wars Rebels Season 4. So the first one here is Sabine actually becomes the ruler of Mandalore. Now, there's a very interesting part in the Star Wars Rebels trailer where Sabine and Bo-Katan are actually fighting each other. And Bo-Katan definitely looks like she's, got the edge in that fight. Maybe she even surprised Sabine. So it's very interesting, is she doing something that Sabine doesn't agree with? Sabine has basically given her the Darksaber, given her the right to take over Mandalore. And maybe she's trying to influence Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan's not having any of it. So perhaps at some point after Star Wars Rebels Season 4, our heroes, some of them have probably met their demise. They are dead. Ezra and Sabine decide that they want to go back to Mandalore and they want to reclaim the Darksaber. And I think Sabine would be able to do that with Ezra's help and the support of maybe one or two of the houses there. So very interesting scenario. Obviously, if they are working together very tightly, it's very likely that a romantic relationship would be created. The one issue with this I have is that Ezra and Sabine would then be sort of locked into Mandalore, but maybe that's what the new animation series is all about. Maybe it is a Mandalorian series. It would be very interesting if it was sort of a Game of Thrones type adult animation. That would be very interesting for sure. Anyway, let's move on to scenario number 2 here, where I think it'd be interesting if Ezra and Sabine step away from Ezra steps away from the Jedi Order, but they both step away from the rebellion. Maybe they are given the ghost by Hera, right? They do cargo runs, they help people, not necessarily fighting the Empire, okay? Not necessarily bounty hunters, but sort of smugglers, that sort of thing, helping people out, doing acts of kindness. Very similar to what we heard Ahsoka Tano was doing in the Ahsoka book, right? Helping people out. So I really like this scenario because it allows Ezra and Sabine sort of drop in and out of a new animation series, right? That would be really awesome. It also explains why the ghost is seen in Rogue One, okay, but not in A New Hope. So, very interesting. I would love to see, Ezra and Sabine in this scenario showing up in a new animation series. The one flaw to this is I do believe Dave Filoni said that Hera, Chopper, and the Ghost are around during New Hope. Now, does that mean that they were around on Yavin? Does it mean that the ghost was off with Sabine and Ezra and Hera was there? You know, who knows? We never quite know with Dave Filoni. So moving on now, guys, to my final scenario where Ezra and Sabine develop that long-term relationship and are together in the future. This is where, and I've presented this before with Ezra going off in search of Snoke, but this time Ezra and Sabine are sent to look for Snoke by Yoda. They sort of track down the unknown regions. Maybe even Thrawn's in there. Thrawn's helping them, or they meet Thrawn. Could be very interesting. Could even be a book at some point. And they find Snoke, who has been imprisoned, and they release him only to meet their own death, right? So Snoke ends up destroying them as they sort of discover who he is and what he does. Now, I've presented that before, and the one big problem is that Snoke, I forget who commented, the one big problem with that scenario is that Snoke said that he saw the Empire, right? He saw it rise and fall. And, it's very interesting to see, does that mean that he has some sort of force powers and he was able to see around the galaxy? He could be very powerful with the Force in that manner. He could have some sort of special Force abilities. Was he actually in the Empire? I don't think that's true. I think he is from the unknown regions. I think the books have been talking a lot about, a great evil in the unknown regions, and I think Snoke is it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are we going to see a relationship, a romance between Ezra and Sabine? I tend to think that, there isn't going to be a lot of this shown on screen in season 4. It's going to be implied, and then afterwards in either a book or the new animation series, we're really going to get more details about the relationship and the romance. So guys, if you haven't already gone over to Force Within TV, please go check it out, and if you like what you see, subscribe. It's basically most of what I publish nowadays is Star Wars Rebels related. I cover a little bit of general Star Wars news as well as my favorite game, the X-Wing miniatures game. But for the most part, guys, is Star Wars Rebels. So head on over to Force Within TV. And again, if you like what you see, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and may the Force be with you always. Please consider subscribing, checking out my Jedi Train Like a Jedi series. Maybe check out a recent video, or down in the video description you will find several links to my website, including a table of contents of all the Train Like a Jedi series.